Okay, fixed. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good, gosh, nice to see you all. I have no idea what just happened. Maybe I went away from it for too long after I set it up the first time. I don't know. It's never done that before. The stream key or whatever it is supposed to be good for 4 hours, and I certainly didn't set it up 4 hours ago. But whatever, it doesn't matter. It's working now, as far as I can tell. Obviously, please let me know if it's not. I don't know what else I could do, except I guess just reboot the whole thing, which is what I did. Which, of course, has many little moving parts in it. So, anyway, good to see you. I'm Tad. I will be here for, well, I'm not quite sure how long I'll be here tonight, because I'm going to read to the end of Happy Hour in Hell, and that might take the whole time, might even go a little over, or it may wind up grotesquely short of my normal 1 hour stretch. Because I'm almost certainly, barring natural disasters, world wars, etc., because of these things, I will almost certainly finish tonight. Therefore, I don't have something keyed up to read tomorrow, and I probably will take the next weekend off. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I have to figure out because we're going out of town, various other things. So whatever else is going to happen tomorrow or later today, I don't have something planned. So what I think I'll probably do is read the first chapter of The Splintered Sun. But I will have to find some time during the day tomorrow to polish it up because it's all first draft and it has to at least be grammatical if I'm going to read it on the air so that people aren't going, what? I hate it when people go, what? So especially when it's my writing that is the cause of that. Anyway, so yes, so that's probably what I'm going to do for tomorrow. So even if you're not going to tune in, if you're interested in hearing that, it might be worth checking it out on one of the YouTube broadcasts. What else to report? Well, we had a nice family get together tonight with some very, very dear friends who we have not had any chance to see lately for a variety of reasons I won't go into. But anyway, it was grand to see them, and we had several family members over as well, and it's always good. So other than that, I managed to get some work in. I'm literally through everything in the first draft of The Splintered Sun, except for probably like the last two chapters, which I'm hoping to knock off in the next couple of days. So I still have some editing time before I have to leave town. But so I'm doing that. So what that means when I get to this stage of a manuscript, it's almost always like one of the big sort of action set pieces or something. Because as we all know, the only way to resolve problems is by whacking them with a sword. Kind of. No, that's not what we believe. But anyway, but invariably with the kind of things that I write, there is, a series of big action set pieces, especially near the end of the story. And since The Splintered Sun is, what's the word I want? It's structured like a single novel. In other words, that it will come to an end in the first book. But it's also, I'm going to keep it open. I hope that people will enjoy it and I can write some more stories because I've gotten quite attached to these characters as they have developed. And as I think I've mentioned a couple of times, one of the really interesting things about working on this particular project is that I went into it thinking, oh, it's another Ostenard book, so like I've only been doing those big chunk of my writing life, including from 2014 until now, or, when I just finished The Navigator's Children, and then I started another book that, even though it is not connected in any way directly to The Navigator's Children, nevertheless is set in Ostenard, albeit 200-300 years earlier than Witchwood Crown, etc. So as a result, I was a little bit overconfident, I guess. I'm not sure, but I just figured, oh, it's an Ostenard book. I know this place. I know the history of it. I know. Well, of course, what you don't realize is there's a difference between knowing history of things in a general way, knowing them in a way good enough once you've got like 8 books written on these characters and places that they have to match up. They have to make sense. They have to work with the stuff you've previously written. More importantly, though, than that, I had to do a lot. I'm still doing it, actually. I'll be doing it probably as long as I'm writing these books, and certainly even more still while I'm finishing this book up and doing the rewrites and stuff. There's an immense amount of world building because I haven't spent that much time in the place where this takes place in the previous books, and what time I have spent is, of course, at least 300 years in the future, or 700 and something years in the past, considering Brothers of the Wind also goes into Hernistir. So between the combination of those two things, there was way more world building than I realized. And that's one of the reasons I pushed it back 6 months, because one of the things I do enjoy, and to the extent that I am a priding person, that I am proud of what I do, I take my world building very seriously. So I wanted to make sure that I did that properly. And also because now, I have put so much time into Ostenard that I want to make sure these books feel like they are all one coherent universe, albeit different times and places. So it's been an interesting process, and it has been much more difficult than I thought it was. And then, of course, I was creating a whole new set of characters from scratch, only one of whom, or well, I guess a couple of them, but really only one of the major characters has ever appeared before, and that was as an old folktale. A number of different things that took longer and were more complicated than they thought they were. So it's been a very interesting process. It has been at times rather humbling, I guess, but all I can speak for is myself. As a writer, I love being humbled. I really do. I mean, I hate it when it's happening, but I love having my own limitations shown to me. Because then if you don't know what your limitations are, then what do you try to exceed? If you don't know where you run smack into the wall of the end of your own competence, then how do you know where you have to try to go next, et cetera, et cetera. So I love projects like that. I love it's super important for me anyway, and especially with the multi-volume stories, but really with everything. I have to love it while I'm working on it. Writing a big, long book and doing, in this case, and with these kinds of books, all the, the thinking and the planning and the world building and stuff that goes with them, you better love it. You better really want to see what happens. You better want to meet the new characters. You better want to, make a good ending that will satisfy the readers and not feel cheap or not feel hurried or whatever. I mean, all those things, because if you don't love what you're doing and you hit that stage where it gets grim and it feels like work, which it almost always does, at some point during the process. And by work, I mean, oh, I have to go to my job today. I love writing. I love writing. I have said many times with utter sincerity, I am so lucky to be doing what I'm doing and so happy to be making things for a living, essentially, and having found enough people to share them with that I can actually make a living doing it. I mean, it's like, what a gift. But that said, there are times when it's a job, and the difference between being a professional writer, namely somebody who does it for a living, and being an amateur, no matter how talented, is an amateur can always put it down. A professional writer has to get it done, and has to get it done because that's how you make your living. And if you don't get it done, your children's, they shrivels. Your dogs and cats, they shrivels too. Your wife loses patience with you, for not bringing in your share of the income, et cetera, et cetera. It's bad all around. So you got to be able to just keep cranking away. And one of the things that helps me is that I always love what I'm working on. I am like a dog with a tennis ball. The book I'm working on is the live tennis ball, the one that has the gift of joy and excitement in it. And, you throw that ball for me and I will chase it and keep chasing it. And that's what writing a book is for me. I am totally focused on that book. It's why I used to laugh in the past when people told me, do you read your own books? At that time, I hadn't ever read anything. I mean, read more than a sentence of something of one of my books. I've had to change that since then. But, or when people, any number of things that people ask perfectly sensible questions, but they're just so amusing to me because it feels different on my side. And the idea of writing something that I didn't care about, or the idea of going back and reading my own stuff instead of the thing that I'm working on now, which is alive for me and a throb with potential and excitement and frustration and everything, that's alive. A book I've already written, I may be proud of it. I may occasionally go back to it and go, yeah, it's not bad or whatever, but it's not alive anymore. It's done. It still exists in my head in a sense, and the lore that goes with it obviously becomes part of the accumulated lore of that world building. But the story itself is done, and it's almost as though I have moved to another country, or as I used to put it, it's like the neighbors that I lived with for years and had wonderful times with, and occasionally they drove me crazy, but I heard their entire lives going on upstairs, in the apartment overhead, or whatever, their fights, their kids, their pets, I mean, you just kind of get to know them so well. And then one day they just move out, and that's what it's like when your characters go too. They moved out. Oh my goodness. Okay. And if you're anything like me, and I think most writers of fiction certainly are, you start making up new characters. You start making up new stories because you're so used to that being a part of your life. Also, last thing I'm going to say on this subject, when you go through the tough times in life that we all go through, it's really helpful to have a project that takes you out of yourself. And I was so grateful during the year that both of my parents died that I had something I could go to, something that in many ways they led me to becoming a writer, but also just a place to go that was not about, dragging through daily life, feeling wretched, feeling mourning, all that stuff, mourning with a U, obviously, but had a place I could go to that it got me going. It was fascinating to me. It was a series of complicated puzzles. It was all these things. And I think that was during the Navigator's Children. Probably I'd started that or was well into that at that point. And honest to God, it's a lifesaver. Same thing happened when I was writing to Green Angel Tower during my divorce in my end of my first marriage, and living in a really crappy place, waiting to go to England to be with Deb. But I had many months before that was going to happen. And so I was living in somebody's garage that they turned into a spare room, and that I rented from them. And there were fleas. There was a cat there who had a zillion fleas, and they'd all gotten into the carpet. And the first time I put my bare foot down on it, like 300 fleas jumped onto my ankles. I mean, it was just horrifying, and I was really depressed. And that's when Simon was on the wheel, for those of you who remember the books. Anyway, so not shockingly, that also, when I was writing The Navigator's Children was like another one of the worst times in my life, and Simon was in the valley, and going through all of that. So I don't know if it certainly wasn't intentional. I mean, Simon being on the wheel was in the original outline, and my divorce happened about 5-10 years after that, or not that long, no, because I was working on the whole thing for about 7 years, but about 7 or so years from when I wrote the outline. So obviously it wasn't something that I went, yes, I'm going to mistreat my main character now because I'm having a miserable time. No, it just happened to coincide. And the same thing with Simon's time in the valley in The Navigator's Children. It's just odd how those things happen sometimes. Okay, here I'm going to actually run out of time, even if I have a short reading today. So let me pop in here and see who has showed up and said hello. And I see Christy. Hello, Christy. You are almost always the first one to sign in, or one or two. There's Mr. Ron. Hello, Ron. Good to see you. A pleasure as always. Andre, hello, good to see you. Kristen, hello, Kristen. That's Kristen Rule. Do you hear from Christians complaining the books are theologically incorrect? I don't know why they would want to say that to me. I would just laugh. I wasn't trying to write anything Christian. Although it's funny that just a quick anecdote, or the first two letters that I got when I was just started out in the business, and I had just published Tail Chaser's song. So my first piece of fan mail was really quite lovely. And it was, we loved the book. We loved this. We thought this part was great, et cetera, et cetera. And said, and we of all people know how true to their nature you made these books, because we live with 19 cats. And I said, oh my God, I got my first fan letter, and it's from a certifiably crazy person. Bless them. And then the second one, this is what made me think of it, what Kristen said. The second one was actually just somebody taking me to task because one of my rivers was flowing the wrong direction. This is the first ever map that I ever did for anything, certainly anything that anybody was going to be looking at. And so somebody wrote me a letter about my fantasy novel where all the characters were cats and went, your river's going the wrong direction. Okay. So, yeah, I haven't heard from anybody complaining I'm theologically incorrect, because my theology is totally made up. Yes, the Adonite Church holds much the same place in the Ostenard human society that the Christian Church did in early to late medieval Europe. But there are differences, and the clues to one of the differences can be found in The Burning Man, that short novel that I wrote. But I won't say any more about that. We may go back to it someday and talk about my theological underpinnings for the books. Anyway, Suzanne, hello. Suzanne says, just back in a momentarily sunny Yorkshire after a lovely week in Krakow, or Krakow, I should say, to pronounce it correctly, which is very nice. And I've been to both Yorkshire and Krakow and enjoyed them both. In different ways, of course. It was really warm here today, too. It was the hottest day we've had this summer, which wasn't particularly hot compared to the rest of the country. But anyway, it was really nice, and then we were able to sit out with family and dear friends outside because of being a warm day, yes, but that meant it was a warm evening, too. Anyway, and there is my mother-in-law, Hazel. Good morning, sweetie. Good to see you. Hello, hello. Your daughter's well. We had Dina and Scott over tonight. Who I know would send you their love, although they talk to you on Facebook, so you know that already. Anyway, lovely to see you. We're all well here. Who else is here? Mark Redmond checking in from Yorkshire, where there is a blue sky and a smattering of clouds. Smattering is a lovely word. Rosalba, good to see you too. Christina, hello, hello. Yes, I will be reading probably from the new book, almost certainly, but it'll be tomorrow night. And Petra, hello. Christina and Petra, of course, are daughter and mother, and two lovely human beings. I have met them both, although I had a moment of complete space out when I met them in Berlin, but that wasn't anything to do with them and what nice people they are. Anyway, thank you for the kind words on the shirt, Andre. Deborah gets me lots of shirts like this. I tend to mostly wear them when I'm going out somewhere to kind of symbolize that I'm doing something, whereas most of the rest of the time I'm wearing T-shirts. But I try and dress it up a little bit. Ron says 700 years in the past. He's talking about the Splintered Sun. He says, so they have no TV yet, or it's still in black and white. Yeah, it was still in black and white back then in Ernest Deer in the year 400 or whatever it was. Anyway, who else is here? Nicole, hello, good to see you. Christy, life is an interesting project. Yes, Christy, it absolutely is. Winter, hello. You have 3 cats now. You are mad. Husband Bill said the cats cannot outnumber the humans. Those are words to live by. The same thing, by the way, is true with children. That's a known fact. You cannot have more children than there are adults. It's just really dangerous. Tom Malkowitz, hello. Tom is checking in from Dublin, another city I've been to and liked very much. And John Baker, who is checking in from Wales. I don't know what city, but I have also been to Wales. And of course, my family name is Welsh. And although that's from my dad's side of the family, so I don't know my biological dad. So I don't know much about that side. But I know we've got Welsh, Irish, Scottish, and all that stuff on my mom's side as well. So I've always felt very attached to Wales, and have been there several times, and look forward to the next time I can go visit there. Okay, so we are now going to the Kindle, and what's going on is last time Bobby got out of hell. long, complicated, many ups, downs, freakouts, etc. But he did finally get out of hell, woke up in the real world, and after various other things happened, including him still checking to see if Walter has come back yet, he made a deal. He told Eligor he was ready to do the exchange. So they, without wanting to explain it all, Sam and Clarence, the junior angel, have both gone out with him to perform this swap where Bobby's going to give the feather to Eligor, which is, that whole other can of worms, and Eligor is going to give Bobby Kaz, or at least release Kaz. And then leave them alone. And that's the deal. So, in the process of this happening, they all wind up with their guns drawn on each other, and they're in an underground garage, or in a parking garage. And so we're starting with Bobby. He says, "Well," I asked. "Well, what?" Eligor was enjoying himself, or at least that's how it looked. "Are you doing Philip Marlowe? Because if so, you'll have to make sure and end up sadder but wiser at the close of this evening." "Just get on with it," I said. "I want Kaz, like you promised back at Flesh Horse. I want her released, I want her healthy, and no reprisals, like you promised. For that, you get the feather. After that, you and Kephas can work out your own arrangements. I don't care about any of this political bullshit." "Fine. You're quite a whiner, aren't you? I want. Where did they find someone like you?" Eligor made a sarcastic show of sticking his hands in his pockets and looking around like he was really thinking things over. "All right, you win. Enough time wasted on this." He reached out to the side, and suddenly there was a zipper there, or at least the hellish version, a red glare traced like a vertical slash wound in the air. He reached through the red glare and pulled out another Kaz. This is because he tried to fake one the first time. He reached through the red glare and pulled out another Kaz, bound and gagged like the last one, but where the previous model had been strangely passive, this one was fighting to get free. Eligor held her by the collar, at arm's reach, as if she weighed no more than a polo sweater. Her kicking feet hung 6 full inches off the ground. "Take the bitch," he said. "All she ever does is complain anyway. And this is really her, this time. You swear by the authority of the highest." He rolled his eyes like a bored teenager. "Yes, just like I told you back in Flesh Horse. I showed her to you, and you said you'd give me the feather, remember? This is her, I promise." "No, as you wish. I swear by the Tartarian Convention, the authority of the highest, and my own existence." That's what you want, isn't it? To hear one of the lords of hell give his solemn word? Then listen. I swear by all those things that this is the same woman. Sam was slowly moving the god glove over her head and above her breast. "This one is real, B." Eligor set her down. She almost fell, but Sam caught her elbow and helped her find her balance. She ran to me, still gagged, arms still tied, and threw herself against me. I wrapped an arm around her, thrilled beyond anything I can say by the feeling of her heartbeat so close to mine. "Give him the feather," I said. "Are you sure?" Sam was looking at Eligor, who stood with arms folded. Fiddlescrape still had his shotgun pointed at us, but didn't look quite as eager to pull the trigger as he had a few moments earlier. "Yeah, give it to him." Sam held it out, but being Sam, he stayed where he was and made Eligor take a step toward him to get it. The Grand Duke took the feather between his fingers, then lifted it up to the weak yellow glow of the garage's ceiling lights. "It's a beautiful thing, really," the horseman said. "Rather special, too, when you think about what it represents. Heaven and hell working together. It's a pity you and the other small-minded folk can't think of anything better to do with that symbol than blackmail me. I wasn't going to dignify this kind of bullshit with a reply. I kept my temper, concentrating instead on the slender, shivering woman pressed against me. She looked up, eyes pleading. I undid the gag, then bent and kissed her cheek, just a touch, before turning back to Eligor. She tasted of salt. I thought it was because she was crying. "Oh, Bobby," she said. She definitely did not sound happy. "Anything else? Last pithy one-liner?" "No." "Well, you and your friends enjoy your evening, Dollar." The Grand Duke sauntered to his big car and climbed into the back. Fiddlescrape closed the door behind him. As the big freak got into the driver's seat and revved the engine, I realized it had been running quietly the whole time. Why should Eligor be ready for a quick getaway? He couldn't have believed that I was going to fall for his doppelganger, could he? Eligor rolled down the back seat window. "I suspect we'll see each other again," he said as the car backed up and then turned to face the exit. "That's the way it is with annoying people. You just keep running into them over and over and over." And then the big car bumped down the ramp. Clarence let out a little breath of relief. It sounded like someone stepping on a hamster, and sat down on the oily cement floor of the parking garage. Obviously, it had all been a bit much for him, but it had all been worth it because I was holding Kaz again. I had been waiting until that bastard was gone to kiss her properly, but before I could lower my face to hers, I realized that my arm felt wet where I was holding her. For an irrational moment, I thought she'd been shot, even though no gun had been fired, and I was terrified. She was crying, harder than I'd ever seen anyone cry, the tears just sheeting down her cheeks. Then her face began to waver, as if I was seeing it through deep water. A moment later, everything that was Kaz about her just washed away, like wet paint hosed off a wall, and I was staring down into the haunted, filmy eyes of Marmora, the drowned social secretary of Flesh House. I'm so sorry, Bobby, Dollar." Her voice was her own now, her body her own too, long and thin and weedy. The puddle around her feet was growing by the second as I stared in helpless terror. "She cares so much." She coughed, bubbled a little. "I'm sorry. He made me trick you," she murmured, her words fast becoming a gurgle. "And sorry for me, too. I could have lived here and been happy, I think." Her head lolled on her long, pale neck, and her poached egg eyes took in the parking garage, the skid marks on the ground, and the exhaust stains on the concrete walls. Her mouth twitched in an unsteady but radiant smile. "Here is so beautiful." And then she simply collapsed into liquid and color, running out of my arms and onto the hard floor in splashing rivulets. The water ran in all directions until one edge found the exit ramp, and then it all flowed that way, down into the lower level. Chapter 48, Accessories After the Fact. Somebody was pounding on my door in a very determined manner, really thumping away. Every impact seemed to crash through my head like one of those super slow-mo videos of someone shooting an apple to pieces. I groaned and fumbled around on the floor next to my bed for my automatic and clutched it against my chest. If the pounding didn't stop soon, I was going to use it either on the idiot at the door or on myself, whichever would end the suffering quickest. I didn't feel that way because I was hung over either. I mean, I was like a motherfucker, but the drinking and the after effects were just byproducts of how little I gave a shit about anything. Thump, thump, thump. Bobby, open the door or I'll kick it in. It was Sam. Fuck you 100 times for making so much noise, I shouted, but that made my head hurt as much as the pounding had. I swear, even for someone who'd recently dug into his own brain box to remove an angry intracubus, this was bad. Go away, or I'll shoot you in the dick. What's his name was right. You are a whiny little putz. Come on, get up and let me in. I realized that if I pulled the trigger in my present, rather impaired condition, my aim might not be good enough to get off a fatal shot. It would, however, go blam really loud right next to my ear. Then Sam would kick in the door. Bang, bang, crunch. Might as well set my own nervous system on fire and try to put it out with a tenderizing mallet. I started to crawl toward the door, got stuck behind the cheap sofa, then finally levered myself onto my feet and staggered to where I could let the noisy, heartless bastard in. I still had the gun in my hand. Sam looked down, raised an eyebrow, and said, Happy to see me? Shut up. Never speak again. Come in if you have to. Can't. I'm waiting for Clarence. He's parking the car. Clarence? I groaned and stumbled to the couch. You brought him here? Et fucking tu, Brute? Just thinking about the rookie's cheerful, boyish questions made me want to throw up inside my skull. Just go away, both of you. I closed my eyes and wished I would die faster. Not gonna happen. I smelled something and opened them again. Sam was waving some kind of huge venti trenti giganti coffee under my nose. Drink this. You've been locked up in here for 6 days, B. It's bad, I know, but you can't just give up. I laughed, but even I didn't like the way it sounded. I can't. Just watch me, baby, and you'll get a master class in total surrender. Clarence came stomping into the room like a mastodon in steel-toed boots. Man, it stinks in here, was the first thing he said. Nice to see you too, kid. I swirled a little of the hot coffee around in my mouth. I knew if I swallowed, I was agreeing to live for at least a few more hours, and I wasn't in any hurry to sign that deal. Still, it tasted good. Well, it tasted hot, and it tasted like coffee. Same thing. Now, why don't you both just fuck on off? Because we're not going to let you drink yourself to death, Bobby, Clarence explained. Then you're too late because I'm already dead, remember? Now that that's solved, it really is fucking off time for both of you. Drop by again soon. Early 22nd century would be good. Sam stood looking around the room. And this, Clarence, my young friend, is a perfect example of the power of self-pity. You can see it. You can hear it in his voice, and the highest knows you can smell it. Bite me, Sam. Seriously. Honestly, we know you're upset. We completely understand. Clarence came closer, stepping through the empties in the food bags as carefully as a minesweeper. I was terrified that he might sit near me and try to be helpful, but he stopped a few feet away so I didn't have to shoot him in the foot or anything. But don't give up, Bobby. You know what they say. It's better if any of the next words out of your mouth are loved and lost, kid, I told him. I will hit you in the face so hard that your eyes and ears and all your other facial features will run around to the back of your head to hide and never come back. Never, ever. You'll spend the rest of your angel life looking like a Mr. Potato Head someone dropped from a tall building. See? You're still funny. I closed my eyes again. I've been to hell already. Why are you doing this to me? Because we want to get you out of here, said Clarence. You need to get cleaned up. You need some air. What I really need. Well, you'll know it's happening about the time you realize that screaming isn't helping you any. Clarence sighed and rolled his eyes. Sam, can you get through to him? Sam laughed. Shit, he never listens to me. He wouldn't be in this situation if he did. What's that supposed to mean? But I was still keeping my eyes closed. I hadn't entirely given up hope that these people talking so loudly in my apartment were just another nightmare of the kind I'd been having plenty of. Seriously, you, Sam, you give the worst advice when someone suggests Lincoln take in a play on his night off. That's an old one, you pathetic lush. He turned to the kid. You can tell he's perking up when he starts thinking he's amusing again. Don't tell him the truth or he might panic. Let's get him into the shower. It wouldn't have been so bad if I'd remembered to pay my utilities. There would have been hot water. We went to Oyster Bill's on the waterfront. I wasn't really going to be revived that easily, but I'd run out of mixers a couple of days earlier, and the combination of straight booze and leftover bits of congealed fast food was killing me. Since I'd been in no condition to find my car, I'd started cutting the vodka with things like maraschino cherry juice. I made white Russians with little tubs of coffee creamer. After all that, I was more than ready to have a few drinks mixed by a professional. Actually, this is slightly overstating the skills of the bartender at Oyster Bill's. Both he and the cook are obviously either relatives of Bill's or his old prison buddies, and both know just enough not to kill any of their customers. But on the plus side, the place also has a jukebox full of agonizingly horrible 70s and 80s pop music. Getting clean and leaving the house had definitely been a step forward, but if I was going to live, I'd need to find something worth living for, which meant finding something about myself worth living for. The failure side of the ledger was pretty impressive, and all I could come up with on the other side was gob. I hadn't managed anything a real hero should have, like getting the poor kid out of hell, but I'd at least helped him out of a terrible situation and into a slightly better one with Rip Rash. That might count for something. Yeah, Bobby Dollar, demi-mini quasi-hero. Every time I tried to think of good things I'd accomplished, the rest of my failures wailed out at me like cartoon ghosts. The latest and biggest failure of all was Kaz, of course. Even the idea of her was a scorched radioactive hole in the middle of my thoughts. I couldn't ignore it, but I had to stay as far away as possible or I'd go crazy. But not thinking about her was really just another way of thinking about her. And then it all started over again. Like I said, the failure side of the ledger was pretty impressive, maybe even spectacular. Case in point, I'd gone through everything hell could throw at me and somehow managed to survive. But I'd lost the one thing I should have held on to at any cost. Lost her because I was arrogant and careless, because I trusted my own ability to anticipate Elgore's tricks. Orpheus went all the way to Hades for his girlfriend and lost her when he looked at her too soon. I lost my love because I hadn't looked carefully enough. I should have known, I said, for what must have been the 300th time since the parking garage. I should never have left hell without her. He was setting me up way back in Flesh Horse, showing me a fake Kaz and telling me he'd release her. He was already planning it then. He hands the fake over, and he's not breaking his word. He didn't even need to, but he had one last chance to torture me, and he took it. My stomach felt curdled. I looked down at my Bloody Mary. Now that I was drinking one, well, my second, to be completely honest, I wondered if I really wanted any more alcohol. Oblivion was the only thing that had allowed me to survive the first few days, but even drinking wasn't helping much anymore. Unless I seriously intended to nosedive into the big black, I had to start thinking about other strategies. Tomorrow. I decided I would definitely start being alive again tomorrow. Or the next day. No, maybe I could do tomorrow. Trying to care sucked. The thing is, said Clarence, I still don't get what was so important about that feather. I mean, even if it was from one of our bosses, why should Eligor care? Is there something he can use it for? And why would he want it so much he'd give up the demon woman? Well, I guess not give her up, but at least pretend he was going to. He saw my face. Sorry, Bobby. Even with all the crazy stuff that had happened to me since I went to hell, I'd continued to be selective about what information I'd share. Even Sam didn't know everything because I'd kept from him what Walter Sanders had remembered. Even if Sam's Kephas really was Anaita, and she had sent Smiler to extort the whereabouts of the feather from me to protect her secrets, I didn't want to put Sam in the position of having to choose loyalties before I had better evidence. I didn't think he'd sell me out, but our friendship had changed in ways I didn't entirely understand yet, and I wanted to be fair to both of us. I could only hope I wasn't putting him in danger by holding out. And Clarence knew even less, of course. He knew a lot more now than I would have liked, but he still didn't suspect how crazy this stuff really was. That a power as important as Anaita, a heavenly principality, could be revivifying serial killers and sending innocent angels like Walter to hell. If I didn't completely trust Sam on the subject, I sure as Holy Harmony wasn't going to open it all up for the kid. The simplest version, I said, is that Eligor made a deal with someone in heaven, someone pretty important. The deal was about creating Sam's third way, a spot outside heaven, hell, and earth. But Eligor wanted protection, especially against his own side's finding out, so he took the feather from the heavenly someone to use as, blackmail fodder, I guess? The idea being that if the heavenly someone didn't uphold their end of the bargain, or things went bad, Eligor would have that feather to keep the angel honest, because it's basically a signed confession that says, I made an unauthorized deal with hell. Both of them had to keep their bargain secret. They couldn't let either side find out. I was suddenly, and rather surprisingly, hit with a hunger pang, probably because I hadn't eaten in a day or so. And now the bastard has the angel's marker back. So what does the important angel have? Clarence asked. I don't know. Regrets, probably, like all of us. Maybe I would get a little food, I decided. Nothing too dramatic, because my stomach wasn't up to it. You gonna order something, B? Asked Sam. Good plan. Get a stack of big old pancakes. Soak up some of that booze. He leaned back and sipped on his ginger ale. Maybe I'll get some calamari. Even Bill's cook can't fuck something up too badly if it's deep fried. You forget that time you found a AA battery in your fish and chips, I said, squinting at the menu. I waved for the waitress and sat back. Then, as if a fuse had been burning and finally reached the barrel of gunpowder, something went boom in my brain. Hang on a second, what did you say? Calamari? Not you, you big asshole, Clarence. The kid had to think for a moment. I asked what the angel has? What the angel has? Well, if the feather was a marker for a deal they had, what was the other marker? If the demon gets the feather, what does the angel get in case Grand Duke Eligor needs to be blackmailed someday? The waitress finally arrived, but I was too stunned to speak. At last, Sam took pity and ordered pancakes and more coffee for me, as well as some crispy artery clog for himself. After the waitress wandered off, I was still thinking hard. I must have looked like I'd had a stroke because Clarence leaned forward and said, Are you all right, Bobby? Kid, if I wasn't slightly insecure about my masculinity, and if I didn't know for a fact that Sam would never let me forget it, I'd kiss you right now. Huh? You're right. You're right. You're so fucking right. I shook my head, amazed by my own epic stupidity. I've been obsessing over this feather for months, but I never stopped to wonder what Eligor had to trade for it. But of course he must have swapped something. You don't swear blood brotherhood without both sides bleeding. and I know what it was. Can you summarize this shit before my calamari gets here? Sam asked. Simple. I noticed something the other night. And several on either side of it, you were drinking heavily, listening to blues records, crying, and vomiting into your wastebasket, said Sam. Occasionally, all at the same time. Are you talking about last week in the parking garage? Whatever. The last time I saw Eligor, he showed a little of his true face. Just for a moment. Not that it's anything like a true face, I explained to Clarence, because Eligor and the other fallen angels are, well, they're older than faces, actually. But he lost control, and I saw a little of his seriously angry demon face. I should have wondered why he always looked like Vald, even in hell. I felt my heart beating. I wouldn't say I was feeling better because I was still missing Kaz so badly. It was all I could do to talk and move around. But for the first time since Marmora turned to sludge in my arms, I felt there might still be something I could do. But I didn't think about it. When his disguise slipped in the parking garage, one of his horns was, well, kind of crumpled and pathetic, like when a goat or some other farm animal gets a horn sawed off, then it starts to grow back. So you're saying, Sam began, that when they made their deal and our important angel gave Eligor a feather to hold on to, it's likely that Eligor gave the angel something too. That horn, which still hasn't grown all the way back. That's why he's been hiding his real hell head. Sam made an impressed face. Huh? But knowing that still doesn't do you much good, does it? Asked Clarence. I mean, if one of the big angels has Eligor's horn, how are you going to get a hold of it? You mean, how are we going to get a hold of it? I said. Because I can't do it alone. I've tried, and it's not working. I need both of you to help me. Sam laughed, but it was one of his hollower efforts. You dick. You're joking, right? I can't afford to joke about this, Sam. It's too important. Eligor has the only woman I've ever cared about, and he also cheated me out of the feather. Something I risked my life a dozen times for, at least. If I get hold of that horn, then I've got something on him, a bargaining chip. Clarence had finally figured out I was serious. No way, Bobby. It's bad enough that I'm off meeting up with important demons in my off hours and covering up secrets that will get me in a lot of trouble if it ever comes up. Actually, secrets that will get you sent to hell. Or worse, I thought, but was sensible enough not to say out loud. But I can't do this. Stealing from one of our bosses so that you can get back together with your girlfriend from hell? My pancakes arrived. I doused them in syrup and got to work. Suddenly, I really was hungry. No, you can't afford to do that, Clarence. You're right. But you can't afford not to either. Damn it, will you quit calling me Clarence? He said this so loudly that people at other tables turned to look. He blushed. How come my earth body never does that? And leaned close to the table as if he was only going to talk to the ketchup bottle and the napkin dispenser from now on. What do you mean, can't afford not to? Because I'm going to go after it no matter what. And although I promise I would never voluntarily rat on either of you, if and when I get busted trying to do this, heaven will probably squeeze every bit of information about the last few months out of me. Who knows what they can do to find things out, and that means they're going to know that you should have blown the whistle on both me and Sam a long, long time ago. The kid was shocked. Are you blackmailing me, Bobby? No, really, no. I'm just being a realist. You can't play this game both ways, Clarence. Or Harrison, if you really honestly like that better. Personally, I think that name sounds like someone should be arranging play dates for you after your Suzuki method violin classes. I poured some more syrup. Clarence is way cooler. He seemed stunned, although whether it was what I was saying or the fact that I'd actually remembered his name, I couldn't say. I don't know. I have to think. A moment later, he got up, fumbled out some money, and dropped it on the table. I have to go. I'm on call. I'll talk to you later. There goes your ride, I said as he left. Sam snorted. Are you kidding? I drove. Don't you remember? That was your car we came in? How do you have a car living in a funhouse mirror? Borrowed it from Orban. He sympathizes with people who are kind of stuck between the two sides. Yeah, I guess he would. I finished off the rest of my pancakes and downed my coffee. You want to drop me back at my place? I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do next. Aren't you worried about the kid? Sam stood up, jingling his car keys. That he's going to drop a dime on you or something? Go right to your bosses? Clarence? Yeah, right. That's why he left $5 on the table for his cup of coffee. He's such an idealist. And he wants to hang out with us big boys so badly. And I'll probably have to hold him back when he decides to storm heaven itself with guns blazing for justice. That's a very scary thought, said Sam as we walked out to the parking lot, headed back to my place. You're not really planning something like that, are you? I mean, even us third-wave folks don't actually want heaven to collapse. Shit, we don't really even want hell to collapse. There's a lot of scary motherfuckers locked up there, and I can't think of a better place for them. Oh, yeah, I said. I agree. I think I met most of them. No, I don't want to tear anything down. I'm just tired of being kicked around, that's all. I want the truth. Sam flicked away the toothpick he'd been using to work the calamari out from between his incisors. You know, that's exactly what people always say just before the really bad shit starts happening. A bit of a wind came in off the bay, fresh but surprisingly cold. I want answers, Sam. I just want a fair shake. I don't want a revolution. He spat something onto the asphalt. From your mouth to the highest's ear, B. Hope he's listening. Amen, buddy, I said. Amen. Then, believe it or not, I went home and cleaned my apartment. Because you gotta start somewhere. Epilogue. Queen of the Snows. By the way, we may go, I don't know how long this is exactly, but we may go a couple of minutes past the top, but this is the last bit, so I'm going to finish it. Epilogue. Queen of the Snows. I was thirsty. I found a little bottle of bitter lemon in Kaz's refrigerator and brought it back to bed. She was dozing, the sheet pulled up only to her thighs, and I stopped in the bedroom doorway, suddenly unable to breathe. So beautiful. I know I keep saying it, but it's because I'm not good with words, not about things like that anyway. She was a small woman, slender, but the curve of her haunch still made weird things happen in the pit of my stomach and other places. I can't explain it, but something about that wonderful slope between hip and ribs that you see when a woman's lying on her side, it's a lot like poetry, I guess. If you analyze it too much, you miss the most important part. And her hair, so long, so straight, so pale, like Kaz herself. The longing was already so strong in me that I couldn't help wondering whether I'd been snared by one of those famous infernal snares. But I hadn't. It was her, and the things I felt were real. I'd been suckered by hell more than once. I knew the difference. She rolled over and peered at me out of one eye. What are you staring at? Haven't you ever seen a fallen woman before? Never seen one who fell this far. You mean to San Judas or to you? Either way. I sat down on the edge of the bed because I wanted to look at her, and I knew if I got too close I'd get distracted again by all the fascinating novelty of touch and smell and taste. I know it sounds crazy, but right at that moment I was thinking of a picture I'd once seen of this 60s actress, Jean Seberg, wearing armor to play Joan of Arc. Unlike Kaz, she had her hair cut really short, and of course she was wearing a couple of dozen pounds of metal to Kaz's absolutely nothing but half a bed sheet. But there was still something compellingly similar, the delicacy of her face, maybe, the fragility of that slender body set against a big, dangerous world. I don't think that actress had a much better time of things than Joan herself, so maybe it wasn't a very healthy comparison. It was still staring. Caught, I laughed. Sorry, I was just thinking about Joan of Arc. Why, are you planning to set me on fire? Only with my love. Kaz laughed, which was nice of her. On her back now, she pulled the sheet up to her navel, which didn't really solve the problem of me staring or being distracted. I remember when she was executed. Wow, were you there? Me? She shook her head. No, of course not. You're such an American. I was in what's now Poland, at least 1,000 miles away, but the word of it spread all over Europe. My husband, may his soul never rest, heard about it when he was traveling and couldn't wait to come home and tell me about it. He thought it was, I don't know, fascinating, exciting. She was silent again. When my own time came, I thought of her. Not of her faith, though. I had none of my own left at that point. I was about to ask a question, but the look on her face stopped me. I thought of her because the horror was not in dying, but in the hatred of the crowd. There must have been at least a few watching in Rouen who thought she was innocent after all, or at least not worth hating. Someone gave her a cross made of sticks so she wouldn't have to face the end without God. But I don't think there was a single person in that crowd in our city square, not even my own children, who didn't think I deserved to die in agony. At that moment, for the first time, I really felt the difference between her and me, or rather, between her memories and mine. I shuddered, imagining the avid, hostile faces of the medieval crowd. Don't, I said. It's over. You're here. I'm here. She turned to me. For a moment, I thought she was angry. I'm still not quite sure what the expression on her face meant, but all she said was, "It's never over, Bobby. Hell doesn't work that way." I climbed in next to her and put my arms around her. I did my best to ignore the distracting nearness of her, her warmth against me, the feeling of her breasts moving against my forearms as she breathed. "I can't get over how pale your hair is," I said as I kissed the back of her neck. I spent a lot of our night together doing that. "It's amazing. Nearly white. Do you have Vikings in your family history?" I guess it could have been dyed, although it matched the rest of her coloring. But I had learned enough in my years on Earth to know that "do you dye your hair" is only a marginally more acceptable thing to ask a woman than "when are you expecting?" She shrugged in my arms. Vikings? Possibly, but my people were a mixture of so many things. Slav, German, Goth, even Mongols. She slid back against me, pressing firmly, not in a sexual way, but like someone seeking comfort. "There's an old story about where the golden-haired people come from. A gypsy story." "Gypsy? You have gypsies in your blood, too?" "No, I don't think so." Her voice had slowed a little. I wondered if she was getting sleepy again. "They had only been in the kingdom for a few generations, but we had a gypsy servant when I was a girl, and she would sometimes tell me stories while she worked." I waited. "And the story about the people with golden hair?" It took Kaz a moment to get started again. "Yes. She said that once upon a time, a tribe of gypsies had camped at the base of a mountain. They didn't go up it because it was always misty and cold, and at night they could hear voices howling in the wind. The only man who was brave enough to climb it at all was a fellow named Corcoro the Lonely, a young man who had no family of his own. But even he wasn't foolish enough to climb too high because he would have been trapped there when the sun went down. Then, one night, there was a terrible, terrible storm with thunder and lightning. The whole top of the mountain was covered in mist so that the peak was invisible. A woman appeared near the gypsy camp, a beautiful but very strange young woman with white hair and blue eyes. "Like you," I said. "Shut up, Wings, I'm telling a story." She reached back and stroked me with her hand in such a way that I became very distracted. It worked, though. I stopped interrupting. Anyway, the first person who met her was Corcoro, the lonely, who liked to roam far from the camp hunting. He brought her back, and the people of the camp fed her and gave her wine to drink, but they were still frightened because she looked so strange. All the gypsy folk were dark, with hair and eyes like night, but she was like something from another world. They asked her where she'd come from and who her people were, and the pale-haired woman told them that she was the Queen of the Snows, and that she lived atop the cold mountain with her father, the King of Fog, but that she had escaped from his court because she had heard that humans knew how to love, and that was what she wished to learn more than anything else. She fell in love with Corcoro, who had found her, and he fell in love with her, and at last the tribe of gypsies came to trust her, although she was always strange to them. She and Corcoro, who was no longer called the Lonely, had 20 children, and each one had hair the color of light like the mother. And that is where golden-haired people came from, according to the gypsies. And is that the end of the story? She stiffened a little in my arms. Not entirely. I mean, not the version I learned. So what happened? Hang on, there it is. So what happened? I don't remember. I'm tired, Bobby. Let me sleep for just a little while. And I should have. But I wanted every moment we had, and I also wanted to know why she'd left off the end of the story. Is it one of those where one of the kids grows up to be some hero? No, she sighed. No, her father, the Fog King, was jealous of her living among humans, and especially of her being married to one. So he ordered her to come back or he would destroy the gypsies. A mist surrounded the gypsy camp, and it was full of the Fog King's soldiers. Their eyes gleamed like cat's eyes. Corcoro wanted to fight, but the Queen of the Snows knew that the gypsies couldn't defeat the Fog King. So when it was dark, she walked away into the mist and disappeared. But she left her children behind, and they all lived to grow up and marry and bear children of their own, and all of their descendants had the same pale hair. And so ever after in Poland there were people with hair like mine. She curled herself up a little smaller. Now, let's sleep, please. Oh, what did Corky do? What? Corky, Corco, Dorco, whatever his name was. Her husband, the one who found her and fell in love with her. What did he do when she vanished back to the Fog Kingdom? Nothing. There was nothing he could do. No living man could reach the top of the mountain where the Fog King lived. Corcoro raised his children. He remembered her. That's the end of the story. That's stupid, I said, and rolled onto my back. For a moment, Kaz just lay where she was, but then she gave in and rolled over so that she was facing me, or at least facing my side. Me, I was staring up at the ceiling. Stupid? It's just an old story, Bobby. I don't care. I want stories to make sense. I would never have let you, if I was that corkadoodle-doo guy, I would never have just let her go. I would have gone after her. But he couldn't. She said it patiently, as though I could see it too if I just tried hard enough. There was nothing he could do. She was gone. He had to learn to live without her. No way, I said. He should have climbed that mountain. He would have been killed. She stroked my head as though I were a feverish child. And then the children wouldn't have had a mother or a father. Doesn't matter. He should have gone after her. She stared at me. I could feel it more than see it from the corner of my eyes. Then she levered herself up a bit and lay her head on my chest. Sometimes there's just nothing to be done, Bobby. Bullshit, Kaz. There's always something you can do. It's a fairy tale. Why are you angry? She was right, and I didn't really know why I was angry. I didn't then. I do now, of course, and I suspect you do too. All the same, he should never have let her go. I wrapped my arms around her as though to keep her with me when the fog rolled in. Never. Sometimes it's more complicated than that, she told me. And that is the end of the book. So, hang on. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry we ran a few minutes over. We actually would have been damn near on time if I hadn't done whatever I did at the beginning that screwed up my first pass through the software. But anyway, doesn't matter. We have now finished. I am now finished, at least for now. I will be back at 7 p.m. reading something, probably the first chapter of The Splintered Sun, assuming I can polish it up enough to make it comprehensible and semi-grammatical. So, with that, I say thank you so much for spending time with me. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of all of your loved ones and friends. Keep an eye out for others around you that you may not know as well, but who still might benefit from a little of your attention, even if it's just a smile or a kind word. Peace. Be good. Think of good things. Think happy thoughts. We can fly, we can fly. Now, that's really enough. Just think of good things, think happy thoughts. And I will see you very soon. And ciao, bambini.